Hello there, everybody. About a week ago, I made a poll asking you for the next video, I want it to be decided by the fans. So here are two options for the next video. Choose wisely. Was Darth Vader nerfed, or why was Obi Wan nerfed? 103 of you voted, and it looks like 78% of you said Darth Vader, so we're going to be doing that. This is a video on why Darth Vader was nerfed throughout the Star Wars story. Now, to explain this thoroughly, I want to talk about not just the Obi Wan Kenobi show as to why Darth Vader was nerfed, but I also want to talk about the entirety of Star Wars canon after the Clone Wars, including all the comics, all of the extra movies beyond that. So, let's get into it. This is why Darth Vader was nerfed throughout the Star Wars story. So to begin, we go through with the Clone Wars. At the tail end of the Clone Wars, Darth Vader had risen. He had become the apprentice of Lord Sidious, had invaded the Jedi Temple, exterminated all the Jedi, had gone to Mustafar, killed all of the Confederacy of Independent Systems leaders, and had effectively ended the Clone Wars within just a few hours. Vader was at the most powerful that he had ever been in his entire life. This one instance, he was so powerful that he was confident that he could defeat Palpatine in a one-on-one matchup, something that even Yoda couldn't do. But unfortunately for Lord Vader, he faced off against the Jedi Master Obi Wan Kenobi, and in a fateful duel to decide the fate of not just the Jedi Order, but also the fate of Anakin Skywalker, Vader overestimated his own abilities, tried to attack Obi Wan Kenobi, but ended up losing 2 legs, an arm, got burned to a crisp, and his lungs were fried, only for him to eventually be taken by Palpatine back to Coruscant to eventually be suited up into the black onyx suit that we see in Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. He finally becomes the cybernetic Sith Lord known as Darth Vader. But unfortunately for Lord Vader, after his loss to Obi Wan Kenobi and getting into the new black suit, everything went downhill very quickly. The suit was conditioned specifically by Darth Sidious to be weakened by electrical attacks and Sith lightning, so his new Royal Imperial Guard could easily dispatch a Vader and torture him anytime they liked under the order of Palpatine. Or Palpatine could just literally do it himself, as he does on multiple occasions throughout the comics and some novelizations. But Lord Vader's suit at the end of the day was a complete dud, filled to the brim with malfunctioning technology, obsolete tech. All of the tech inside of his suit would constantly go on the haywire anytime at random, and Vader's suit never got upgraded, and he would never reach the former abilities of Anakin Skywalker, who could evenly fight with Prime Obi Wan Kenobi in a one-on-one fight. And some people like to speculate that this suit was specifically made by Palpatine as a way to punish Lord Vader for his inability to kill his former master. Because, with all guarantee, if Palpatine actually wanted to make Lord Vader what he was in his former self whenever he raided the Jedi Temple, he easily could have made Vader one of the most powerful cybernetic Sith Lords of all time, but willingly chose not to do that because he was afraid that his former apprentice might try to kill him if he found out what actually happened to Padme and how it was actually Lord Sidious himself who implanted the dreams of Padme into Anakin's head, which caused him to turn to the dark side in the first place. But for right now, we have to talk about the Obi Wan Kenobi TV show, because this is where things reach a high point. So, why was Vader nerfed in the Obi Wan Kenobi show, and why was he struggling so hard against Obi Wan Kenobi in the first place, which we're going to have to get into. So at the end of Episode 3, during the Obi Wan Kenobi series, Lord Vader makes his appearance and faces off against Obi Wan Kenobi. This is a completely one-sided fight on Lord Vader's behalf, who is essentially toying with Obi Wan Kenobi as he is fighting him, hiding in the darkness, trying to make Obi Wan Kenobi afraid of Darth Vader, knowing that Obi-Wan knows who he is. And throughout this entire fight, Lord Vader is just enveloped in this sense of rage and hatred and horrifying disgust for Obi Wan Kenobi after what Obi Wan refused to do to Anakin, that is to save him from the molten lava as he was being set on fire. A decade's worth of anguish, hatred, disgust, torture, all thinking that maybe one day Lord Vader would have his vengeance against Obi Wan Kenobi, who, through Vader's point of view, turned his back on him and left him to die. The man who Vader considered to be a fellow Jedi, the man who he considered to be a friend, a man who he considered to be his brother, who cut off his legs, cut off his arm, left him in the most desperate position that he had ever been in his entire life, literally begging for help on the shores of a molten river of lava, and was left to die burning on the sands of Mustafar, and who eventually became the monster who Obi-Wan is now currently fighting. Now, at the tail end of episode 6, where Vader and Obi-Wan finally have their climactic clash, Vader loses, and I'm not completely sure how or why. Take note, this is a Lord Vader who's been going around the entire galaxy for 10 years, killing however many Jedi that he's been killing. Obi-Wan Kenobi had seemingly been off and about on Tatooine trying to protect Luke Skywalker, but being constantly cut off from the Force and trying to communicate with Qui-Gon Jinn. So here we have a Sith Lord who's been killing Jedi for about a decade, and a Jedi who's been in exile on Tatooine for a decade, who hasn't had to use the Force in any stretch of time, unlike in the novelizations and in the comics, where he had been constantly using the Force and protecting the Lars homestead from major threats like the Tusken Raiders, bounty hunters like Black Chrysanthemum, and several other foes that tried to kill Uncle Owen, because Uncle Owen apparently doesn't know how to keep his mouth shut. But Lord Vader takes control of the first half of the fight. He buries Obi-Wan Kenobi under some rubble before Obi-Wan breaks out of the rubble, seemingly uses the Force to damage Lord Vader's chest piece, and then throws a bunch of rocks at him before cutting his mask off, which is supposed to be a mirror of what Ahsoka eventually does later on in Rebels. And it's not very much explained as to how Obi-Wan Kenobi suddenly got this burst of Force energy. It's not really explained as to why Vader just didn't use the dark side of the Force to try and kill Obi-Wan Kenobi instead of trying to bury him under rubble. I guess because he has an ego still as Lord Vader as he did as Anakin Skywalker. I'm not completely sure. Now, maybe my tiny little squirrel brain doesn't really understand the complexities of this cinematic masterpiece, and as to why Obi-Wan Kenobi, despite the fact that he cut himself off in the Force for well over 5 years, nearly a decade, was able to basically binge using the Force for a weekend and learned how to use the Force all over again, to the point where he became so powerful that he could defeat a Sith Lord, who is so angry and so powerful and so connected to the dark side of the Force that he literally goes on an entire killing spree all across the galaxy, murdering every Jedi that he finds in his path, including murdering everyone who mildly disagrees with him. Now, it could possibly have something to do with the fact that maybe it's the complexities of how the light side of the Force will always prevail over the dark side, and how the light side of the Force will always give power to those who are in need of it, and will always work to defeat the dark side, and the light side will always eventually win. Or maybe it's something stupid like, oh, I don't know, you threw Darth Vader into an Obi-Wan Kenobi show despite the fact that Darth Vader's supposed to be an all-powerful Sith Lord, aside from the main bad guy being Sidious, and Obi-Wan Kenobi is supposed to be alive at the beginning of episode 4 so he can train Luke how to be a Jedi, and there's no reason why Obi-Wan Kenobi should lose this fight in your mind. Either way, you screwed up, that's not my fault, and I'm gonna take a fucking nap.